Hello, my name is Jamie, and I am the strategy lead for Elastos Elevation Team, the growth team. And we're really excited today to introduce and invite Adin from Wisdom Labs here. And so, Adin, do you want to just maybe introduce
Yeah,
yourself?
absolutely. Nice to meet everyone who's virtually watching this. My name is Adin. My title is Head of Web3 at Wisdom Gaming and Wisdom Labs. So Wisdom Labs is actually within Wisdom Gaming, kind of our development and software department. So we handle everything from just understanding, how to utilize tech within the gaming space, to then like full on developing the tools. And we have a dev team within that allows for all those capabilities. Now, Wisdom Gaming as a whole is just a broader gaming specific agency. If I were to simplify it on the two things Wisdom Gaming prioritizes or like really does is number one, we build gaming communities, and then number two, we help brands get access to gamers. So I think what's that mean in the Web3 space, as obviously Elastos is a blockchain, my title is head of Web3, is a few things. One, it's no stranger to anybody that Web3 is currently very like user interaction heavy. It's not as smooth as Web 2 games used to be or currently are. And there's definitely a lot of support there that can be done on how to make Web 3 feel more conducive to gamers in the way that Web 2 always has. So we can help support on that end from everything from the actual consulting groups on how to appeal to gamers to helping them build the tools and the interfaces that allow for that. And then even actually once that's all done, help on the marketing side. As I mentioned, our other aspect is build gaming communities and help give brands access to gamers so we can run full-fledged marketing campaigns. And that's stuff that we're no stranger to in the Web 2 space, which I can touch on as well if you'd like, Jamie.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think we'll get there. Just to preface all of this too, right? We just
Hmm.
just announced sort of a partnership, and we're kind of positioning, Lastos is positioning you guys as sort of like our premier builders, and what we mean by that is really that we're trying to build out sort of all the capabilities to help people come and build on the Lastos, and it requires people with expertise in building specifically for games and for gaming communities and having that understanding. And you guys are really awesome at that. So, I know I can speak on behalf of pretty much everybody within Elastos that we're super excited to have you join the ecosystem, and really excited to introduce you to some of the platforms that have already kind of joined us, interested in our technology. But before we get into all of that and what might come of it, I guess in terms of, yeah, talking about what you guys specialize in, you talked about building game communities, introducing brands, and building sort of like an economy around that. I think that speaks a lot to sort of what we really hope to do within Elastos too. So maybe you can give us a little bit more background about how you do that in Web 2, how you're planning on bringing that to Web 3 as well, and maybe where you see some of Elastos's technologies fitting into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Wisdom Gaming started on the esports side of traditional gaming. We work alongside Riot Games, Konami, Activision Blizzard to actually help them coordinate their competitive gaming and esports scenes. From there, I think our most notable group is we work very closely alongside Riot on a teamfight tactics in North America. So helping actually build out that competitive landscape, the ecosystem, and just build the community around that game. So through those jobs, as well as the people that work at Wisdom, we have a lot of like former pro gamers and just true diehard gamers that work here, which really put us in a unique position to understand two things. One, what a good game needs to feel like, and gaming tools, etc. And then two, who that is targeted towards, what group of gamers, because I mean, just within the US, there's, I believe, 60 million plus gamers. If we're talking about the world, I think it's north of a billion gamers. So within that, then you really have to niche down and understand, okay, who are the people playing RPGs? Okay, now within this, there's even more sub communities, etc. So really helping groups understand how can I make this game fit that community best. On the development side, we have full dev capabilities from gaming tools to actually full-scale game development, and we can use our resources from the advisory side on what games should look and feel like to actually then push to develop those tools and help groups develop. We work alongside a handful of groups, which sadly I can't mention all of them because of NDAs, but to actually build out full-fledged games and gaming tools for them. And that's within the Web3 space as well. So all of that can be completely blockchain compatible, have NFTs, whatever the specific need for the client is. And I think obviously that's why we're really excited about this Elastos partnership, because me and our co-founder, Ian Anderson, who sadly couldn't make this call, are very big in what Elastos is and its vision. I think we're both very big Bitcoin maxis, and it's the closest thing to actually having like Bitcoin side chains that are fully EVM compatible, and helping groups be able to actually like build their games on top of Elastos or build their tools on top of Elastos is a vision that we really want to help support and actually help groups move forward with.
So great to hear you say that. I mean, it's funny because I was introduced to Elastos as a sort of an ecosystem, and it was only after really understanding that, well, it's also, you know, a bunch of technology that has just been kind of, you know, been building, and I don't think anyone was really kind of trying to figure out, well, how exactly can we put it to work? And it was one of the first things that I learned about Web3 was around, you know, GameFi. And immediately I was like, well, so much of what goes into making games and the economies that can be built within GameFi work, it's like this is technology that we have natively within our ecosystem, and it all works together. And so maybe before we get into some of that specifics, I guess, could you tell me your definition of GameFi? Like what, because it's also in its short life has gone through some changes, I believe, right? There's been a bit, maybe there's been some ups and downs. A year ago, you would have been probably hearing that GameFi is dead. And then here we are now realizing that, well, it's not dead. It's actually just maybe getting more sophisticated or changing, or the definition's changing. So I'd love to hear what your definition is. And maybe you can explain a little bit to those maybe listening that don't know quite what GameFi is.
Yeah, and you know, I think I'm in the same group there, where even though I'm building in this space and we're constantly working in there, I think my personal definition of GameFi is always changing as well. So if I'm looking at it, I would say there's kind of one core definition of GameFi, but that doesn't have to associate with all of Web3 gaming, because if we're just taking the term GameFi, to me that means we're incorporating some type of finance aspect, specifically related to DeFi within gaming, and that doesn't have to apply to all Web3 games. But first, I'll talk about just GameFi. So to me, that can be an ecosystem as simplified as just a gamified DEX. We've seen popular Web3 games like DeFi Kingdoms, which started really just like creating a game on top of a dApp and then turning that into a fully fledged on-chain video game. And to me, that's the core of what GameFi means. You're taking just the fundamental aspects of Web3 and specifically DeFi, and then gamifying it and building a game on top of that. Now, if we were then to take a step wider and kind of broaden what that looks like and just talk about a Web3 gaming as a whole, to me, that's anything that uses like Web3 capabilities specifically to add more value to the user of a video game. And the reason I emphasize that add more value aspect is because I know, especially when the GameFi scene and Web3 gaming scene was starting, a lot of people were just using the blockchain aspect kind of as a marketing approach, or as a, oh, here's what makes my game different, even though like there was no benefit to the consumer there. But I think what a lot of people have to realize is that Web3 gaming provides so much benefit to the individual gamer. There's countless examples, but I'll just choose one right now. You know, I'm sure a lot of people have heard the idea of owning your digital asset. Well, what does that actually mean, and why should I care to own my digital asset? And to me, this is one of the core reasons I believe in blockchain gaming. So let's look at a car. When you actually own your car, you have the right to do whatever you want with it, whether it's trade or sell it to someone else for another car or money that you might need down the line. If something happened and you got in legal trouble, got kicked out of your state, or got in an argument with someone you live with, if you own your car, it's still yours and you can move around with it. Well, people are spending thousands of dollars on in-game assets, but they don't actually have true ownership of it. So if something happened and they had to, I don't know, leave the game, or there was some type of dispute where there was an argument over who gets the PC, well, with the ability to truly own your asset, then you don't have to go into that gray area of, okay, what happens next? I spent all this time in this game. I spent all this money in this game, and like, this game is part of my life. I want to be able to prove that I am part of the ecosystem, that I own the assets that belong with me, and I want the ability to bring them with me wherever I go. And I think, I kind of went in a circle there, but to me, true ownership of your assets in game is one of the biggest and most important parts of Web3 gaming. And then to bring that full circle as to what does GameFi mean to me, I think it means the base of blockchain gaming. So anything that allows for all those financial aspects within game, whether it be a full, to go back to the example of DeFi Kingdoms, whether it be a full financial game, or whether it just be a game that's then powered by certain DeFi aspects.
Okay, so then I'm wrong in sometimes using GameFi and Web3 gaming interchangeably. So one is much more sort of built around the DeFi elements, and then the other one is just, it could be that, but also more broadly, it includes just anything that's using some of the community tools and capabilities of what Web3 can bring to the table in terms of helping you to have that self-sovereignty, or the ownership, or the immutability of the assets themselves.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say you're wrong. If I'm being honest, this is mostly just a definition that I've been thinking about over the past few months. I think broadly the space, if you're referring to GameFi, probably still refers to all blockchain games. But this is something that I think is very important for Web2 users to differentiate.
Okay. And so going back to one of the things that you said earlier on was that Wisdom Gaming, Wisdom Labs, you guys, one of the things that you specialize in is in ensuring that games are built right, and that they're built for the community, and that there's a value inherently in those. Can you explain to me then, like, regardless of the technology, it could be even board games, like what is it about gaming, and what is it about human nature? And if we were to break it down to its like base, like, what is a good game? What makes a good game?
Phenomenal question. And I'll try to answer that to the best of my ability. I would say, if we're really just simplifying it and getting to the core of what makes a good game, then we need to talk about, you can either call it a core loop or a game loop, which is within this game, what is the, for lack of a better term, addictive feedback loop of, I did the thing, I got a dopamine spike, now from there, I'm going to use this reward and repeat. So that's as simple as a board game. Within it, the competition aspect really is the feedback loop, because I play the game. If I win, well, I get a little dopamine hit because of whatever reason I prioritized winning, and I want to repeat. From there, now, I would say game designers at this point are really just psychologists. They're really dissecting the human mind to understand how can I make this as addictive as possible, which then can lead it to being as fun as possible. How can I give the most rewarding experience for the viewer, where when I'm playing this, I really felt like my actions contributed to me feeling more positive, or if I didn't do well, me feeling more negative. So making it feel as like one-to-one with real I'd almost say real world achievement as possible.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as a gamer myself, I wouldn't consider myself like a competitive gamer, but I still,
Hmm.
it's a great escape. It's great, I know exactly what you mean about owning those assets too. Like I grinded so hard for some armor, and then you
Hmm.
stop playing the game, but you can't take the armor with you, and you can't,
Yeah.
and your parents can't understand that it's not like the Super Mario game that you were playing, but it's actually something that you were like you're participating in it and you're playing with your
Hmm.
friends. And it's evolved so fast that I think as an industry, you guys are really at the cusp of all of that too. And so maybe you guys have such a big esports component to what you do, and it's really about the community. Talk to me about that. Like how is community built around gaming? Because that's what we're trying to do with Elastos too, is with you guys as part of that. How do we invite people to be part of what we're trying to do?
Hmm. I love this question because actually a bit more about me. Before working and starting our Wisdom Labs team with Ian, I was the co-founder of the State High School League for esports in Minnesota, which is another initiative owned by Wisdom, and that's all about community building. So I think if we're speaking about what does a gaming community mean, I think we need to start with like who's within these gaming communities, specifically in esports. Um, a lot of people need social and competitive outlets in life, whether it's competition with yourself, with others, whatever it may be. I would say up until recently, the main outlet for this within high school and then so on outside of school was just traditional sports. But not everyone can play traditional sports, whether it's because of like the social aspect, they don't feel like they belong in that group, whether it's the physical aspect or both. But there's large groups of people that might feel alone and lost, even though there's thousands, if not millions or billions of people exactly like them. And I think what gaming has allowed is, since there's so many different types of video games and so many outlets for it, it allows you to really find your place and others like you that you can then participate with, grow and become a better person with, get that social outlet and that competitive outlet, and like get achievements together. If you're a MMO player, when you're working with someone online, I mean, it's a great feeling to get an accomplishment together as a group. Even in games like, I mean, Minecraft, one of, if not the biggest game in the world at this point. When I have a Minecraft server with friends or just playing by myself, every time you start a new world, there's nothing better than finding diamonds for the first time. And that is a real, like, gratifying feeling that is the same as accomplishing something in the real world. And, you know, having a community that you can celebrate those small wins with and, like, have the ups and downs with really allows people to have this extra like home away from home online without actually having to leave their home.
No, so true. And so in in creating these communities and in building this, right? Like obviously you need the games. The games
Mhm.
help. And I guess what I wanted, my next question is like, how do you build games? Like what,
Mhm.
because I think one of the biggest challenges that I've been noticing in Web3 gaming is that there's this expectation that everything's a AAA game, right? And
Mhm.
then you
Mhm.
see the realities aren't always that. But people forget that some of the best games you play were like snakes on your phone, on your Nokia, or so games don't always have to be these huge, complex, high graphics and things like that. But so how do you go about building games and thinking about what is a good game and making that game?
Mhm.
Because that's what we want to start doing at Elastos, right? Is to start inviting people to come and build games and to, who have great ideas for games to come and use our technology to try to do that in a Web3 space. So yeah, like where do you start? If I had a good idea, how would I
Yeah.
start?
Mhm. And I think, I'll touch on that in a second, but what's interesting is you brought up the fact that not every game is a AAA game. And I think one of the things that was happening in this last just NFT bull run, kind of Web3 bull run in general, was a lot of people saw a use case for the tech, but didn't think backwards. They thought more so just, okay, here's blockchain, this is trendy. Now, how can I build a game around this? When that's not how games are built. So to answer your question, I think the best way to build a game is backwards. Start with, okay, here's my vision of something I want to play. I want to be able to get really simple. Snake. I want to have a game where there's some type of component that as I interact with the environment, I become stronger, but as I become stronger, my weakness is myself. Well, what we really just described is Snake as he's eating like the different whatever, the food he's growing, and he's becoming more dangerous to himself, and if he hits himself, he dies and start over. Okay, so we understand what the end goal should look like and feel like, but now we go back to what I was mentioning, the game loop. What is the cycle of the game that's getting me to repeat playing over and over again? Is it just a simple, here's an achievement, good job? Is it within it? I mean, there's can be many loops within it, right? We have Minecraft. You have, if we were just to look at it as getting and killing the Ender Dragon as the main goal, okay, there's the largest loop. But then there is smaller achievements along the way. I want to get better armor. Once I get that armor, I feel rewarded. I achieve my goal. Now I move on to the next harder thing. So it's after you have your largest vision, then understanding what systems do I need to have within the game to make it actually feel repeatable and make it feel playable. Then from there, it's actually the development side. You can either hire and work with a development group like Wisdom Labs, or if you're trying to develop it yourself, or you are a developer, there's many different ways to do it. There's it would be very complicated, but you could technically build your own video game engine. You can use tools like Unreal Engine and Unity and then code within them. But I would say, without going into too much detail, because if it was a full game development course, that would take months. It just comes from understanding the end goal, what I want to build, then breaking down the psychology of the systems within the game, and then finding a tool and an interface to build on top of that.
Okay, so then take it one step further, then how do you start integrating the Web3 components? Like what is it? Does the technology dictate the user experience, or does the user experience dictate what technology you want to employ? Or is it more symbiotic?
I would say it's much more symbiotic. This goes into the step of the game loop. What aspects, or I mean, it's also very similar to a business funnel, right? What aspects of this loop would someone get benefit from certain Web3 technologies? So I'll just use the easy answer of NFTs. Identifying digital ownership. Here's an experience in the game where I just got a huge achievement. Now, how can I verify that I was the third person in the world to get this achievement? There can be leaderboards online, but I, as a developer, see that NFTs would be the best use case here. So I'm going to attribute them to essentially this part of the game loop. And I'm deciding what components of my game systems are going to benefit the most, or benefit the user the most, if I start to use outside technologies. And I think this is kind of the natural progression of all technologies, not just Web3. If we talk about as game graphics got better, there'd be games that had incredible graphics and looked AAA. Then you load it up, feels awesome for 30 seconds, and then there's no game loop, or there's no purpose to the game, and you're bored of it. Versus if someone just, animation came out within games, 3D animation, instead of making everything 3D, they just made small parts of it, such as when you get an accomplishment, now they're using some type of 3D aspect to make it feel a bit more like there's a pop-up, there's a more excitement. Well, what they did is they actually thought about how can this really impact the user experience, and what is the not necessarily lowest lift, but what is the most direct impact this can have on the user.
Yeah. Okay. So then let's think about Elastos's tech stack, and let's think about ways that we can talk about how it could be maybe implemented or add that value that you're talking about for help, for the gamer and for the game loop. So, for example, we have decentralized identities, one of our core sort of aspects, right? So DIDs, they're W3C compliant. They can work, across chains. And just curious then, like, what is it about unique IDs, right? All of us, when we sign into a game, we have a unique ID. Our game achievements are tied to those IDs. We have a trophy room technically, right? With those attached to those IDs. I mean, that seems to me like a pretty fundamental place to start, maybe, in terms of thinking about how a game community or a game can be created. Any thoughts on DIDs?
Absolutely. And I think so now we're getting into a conversation that's I haven't heard much in Web3, which is how can Web3 technology be used to prevent cheating, fraud, and then just toxicity within gaming. Now, take a step back before answering this question. I think anybody who's played a multiplayer game where it's just online matchmaking has experienced some type of toxicity, some much worse than others. And that's a huge problem that game developers are facing. How can I build fair systems and online economies within my game that, one, are fair from the economy side, but two, like people who are taking advantage of others, whether it's verbally or like actually fraud, taking their resources and scamming them within the game, how can they be fairly punished? And I think digital identities are a very unique way to do this, where we don't actually have to create a system that associates directly with someone's gamer tag. It can be there's still the anonymity aspect of it, but we can then build systems that start to track and analyze this to then build a more fair gaming ecosystem where and I think blockchain and now actually with AI, I think these two paired are really going to start to change the playing field there. And I have started to see some anti cheats using this, but not actually I guess anti-toxicity, or I'm not exactly sure the best way to say this, but I think that's a very unique use case for that, and one that would provide massive amount of benefit for a massive amount of people.
Yeah, well, one of the projects that's built with Elastos Tech is CREDA, right, which is the credit scoring protocol. But CREDA is also not just for credit; it's about credibility, and so that could, the models that we have could be easily applied to creating sort of positive feedback loops. So if you do good behavior, you get good credit score or good credibility scores. You do bad behavior, you get bad scores, and those scores can unlock new rewards and stuff. You can totally see how it starts to really start to almost reinforce better behavior in the ecosystem, in the community. So that's a great example. What about Hive, for example, decentralized storage, right? So I think that one might be a little bit easier to think about, but I often think about, once you can start owning the gear or the stuff, right? Like you need to keep it somewhere. Where do you keep it that's safe and where that you can control who gets it, who sees it, who buys it, who lends it? But any other thoughts in terms of like where decentralized storage can come in?
No, yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest use cases for decentralized storage is the ownership or decision-making prowess of users within the gaming space. So this can be everything from content to the game itself. I'll go back to the example of comparing digital assets to a car. In a game, in the current gaming landscape, if the assets are stored off-chain and it's not decentralized storage, then even if it's owned or attributed to my account, it's still owned in a central location where the game developer has full control of if that asset one day needs to be taken out of my account, if it needs to be moved, etc. Now, say we're moving to the content landscape. Decentralized storage can create solutions that allow viewers of content and advertisements as well to actually get like fairly compensated for the views they're putting and the engagement they have, because now these assets are stored and validated on chain. And if users interacting with whatever that digital asset that's stored on chain is, whether it's a video, a game, etc., their entire interaction can then be tracked on the blockchain, and we can start to we can start to connect like certain you went back to achievements or positive or negative effects to how people interact with things that are stored on chain.
Right. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I mean, so much of gaming now has become the streaming of gaming and watching other people. Like, I remember I used to do so much, couch co-op where, half the time you're not even playing, but you just like watching, being there while someone else is playing. That's such a big part of gaming now. So creation of that content and then storing that content. And I don't know if you're aware, but Sash at Elacity has been developing and is almost, I think ready to deploy decentralized DRM, digital rights management, which, when you start layering that sort of stuff on top, you can build smart contracts that, before, if you own an NFT, you either sell it or you buy it. There's like not a lot else you can do with it. But now you can start thinking about creating content. You can start licensing it. You can start, distributing it. You can have multiple people renting it at the same time, or you can let some other platforms use that technology as well. And so you guys must really understand that space because of all the broadcasting and content that you create as Wisdom. So maybe talk to me about rights management and how could a decentralized rights management really open up a lot of opportunity in this space also.
Yeah, absolutely. I think and thank you for drawing this connection, because this isn't really something I've thought of before with live streaming. The DRM is something that I geek out about a lot, and I've actually spoken to Sash about it. But let's take, for example, live streaming. When you're looking at the world of music rights, someone who puts work into a song and then like whether it's a producer or just someone making ad libs on the side, they get a percentage of those royalty rights. And DRM is going to really help automate and maximize efficiencies there. But now let's talk about live streams and gaming content. If I was let's say I was in a moment that went viral online and made the creator 500,000 views or $500,000 with millions of views. I didn't actually know that I was in this moment, but I helped make this person tons of money, and I should fairly be compensated for that. Well, if this game was in Hive, or if this game was on chain, certain aspects of it were in decentralized storage, and this content was using a DRM, then since all that is tracked on chain, it could identify that I was in this content, I played a role, I should be compensated for helping this person. Now, anything that's there, I actually have proof to track, here's how much I'm owed, or if they're getting paid on chain somehow for the content, now it can all be automated, and every dollar he gets, I get 5 cents of that, and that was literally just from playing a game.
Yeah. Do you think because there's like the gaming industry, and I know you are in the gaming industry, so I don't want you to like shoot yourself in the foot, but there has been a lot of sort of talk about some of the practices within the gaming industry and just the overwork and there's maybe gamers themselves are starting to become more aware of how much effort and energy is put into putting into games. Wouldn't it be amazing if everyone who was part of building a game, like every time that game was played, every time a dollar was spent in that game, it was immediately distributed to everybody in the right denominations, right? But where there's no chance that there was someone putting an extra little bit in their pocket or some CEO taking a bigger bump, but it was completely transparent. Like that to me feels like people would want to play those games if they knew that the artists and the grunts and everybody that had every piece of, had their fingers in every little pot were able to be compensated that way. Sounds pretty good to me.
as a game developer, I'm not allowed to answer that question. I completely agree. And I think one of our goals is like always looking at this technology. And as I mentioned, not only how we can benefit like the users by the technology, but just how we can like leave this space better than we entered it. I mean, we didn't create the gaming space. We're not going to be the last people to work in it, but how can we kind of have a footprint to actually kind of shift it in the right direction? And I think that's a phenomenal approach of like, okay, here's my little digital signature in the game. I put in this many hours. I think where it does get complicated is perceived value of work compared to time put in. Because say you worked on the main story, but you put in half of the amount of time as someone who worked on just the background or something like that. Not just the background, but you get what I'm saying. Now, who's deciding what these payouts should be, whose royalty should be divvied out to what? Now, an interesting, and this is me thinking on top of the spot, but an interesting approach to that would then be, it's the gamers of that specific game who get to decide it. Because if this is a Web3 game and they're in a DAO to represent the game, then they get a vote on how that company acts in certain aspects of control. So they can then have the ability to decide, well, we did really think the background was extremely important. Maybe that should be a 1.5% compared to the hours instead of 1-to-1. I'm just making up numbers here, but I think yeah, I never thought about that approach for royalties on chain for developers. But then if we're talking about that, DAO having control of royalty distribution is very interesting as well.
Yeah, that took it an extra step that I wasn't considering either. And don't know if we can always trust gamers to make the right decisions for things, but I do think that there's something there, and it could be much more equitable than it is today anyway, right? In terms of how it works.
Oh, absolutely.
So Elastos also has just, again, we're just about to finish upgrading Carrier 2, so which is our carrier network, which is a decentralized communications, peer-to-peer communications. So I imagine that, when people are playing games, how important is it to be able to communicate with each other, to get alerts, to get, to be able to chat with your buddies and stuff like that. So I guess the social element of gaming is super important as well, right?
Oh, social element is absolutely, I think, if we're talking about from the community side, I think it's one of, if not the most important part. As I was mentioning, a lot of gamers, or let's reverse this. A lot of people who might find themselves not having a community or not having a good social life in person or at their home can then find the social life within gaming. And I would say that's definitely a story for a lot of gamers. So having kind of this secure peer-to-peer connection, and then it can be directly connected to all games, and your ID carries. I mean, it's kind of like connecting. Here's your Discord that's now connected to every game that's built on top of the same infrastructure. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, because there's a lot of opportunity for crossover, and I guess maybe, we're getting into much more theoretical space here now, but I mean, what would be the possibility of people being able to create their own magic swords and bring them into games, right? Or like to start, to mint an NFT that is somehow compatible with the game infrastructure, so that now you can actually, use that character skin that you created or that you bought or anything like that. Like, is that something that you've seen before, or is that possible? I know that you can do it kind of in some metaverse environments, but I've never seen it in like a game.
Yeah, I would say kind of the first people to be doing something similar to this would be like Roblox, where within it's kind of its own game engine, and you can build your own games or game items on top of that. Now, say we're talking about an entire ecosystem of games on Elastos, where assets that are stored in Hive, the digital storage, can then be shared between any game that references that metadata. Now, that would mean that I'm a company that doesn't really necessarily know game development, or I don't necessarily want to develop a game, but I'm a gamer and I care for RPGs. Now I can start to build swords that have a certain aspect of or not certain aspect, that have certain traits that would be replicatable in any game that's pulling from that. And if I own this sword in game A, I can use it in game B, C, and D. The difficulty here is in order for an ecosystem like this to thrive, and I think even be created or spiraled in the first place, is there needs to be some aspect of audience already in that ecosystem. And I think, if we're talking about Elastos, they're positioned really well to start to make this the case, especially with Elacity and am I allowed to mention the gaming district?
I mean, I think that's it's kind of, yeah, let's talk about the gaming district.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with Elacity and kind of building out a central hub for gaming there, if you guys are able to draw gamers and gaming audience to this specific location, now it means that any game coming to Elastos has the easy ability to tap into this audience. And not only that, but it means that this audience is now going to care about these games being connected, even though they're from different developers, different studios, etc. Because the audience is through Elastos and not the other way around, it means that they're going to want it all to be part of the same ecosystem, and that would benefit them greatly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, so now that you've let the cat out of the bag, I think, the idea is that, through this partnership, it's the beginning of what we hope can become what we're calling the gaming district. So for those that don't know, Elacity is a metaverse essentially that is building all of the pipes and roads and everything that you would imagine in a city. And it's building these districts, right, so that they're fully capable to be able to service industries. And so Sash, who's the founder, has already built, for example, the Flint district, where it's got generative AI. You can go in there and you can immediately create your artwork and then mint it in the same click of a button in a way that is very automated and fast. And so he's got marketplaces he's building. It's all really built around the concept of the access economy. And we won't go into all that. I think that's a conversation for another day, but really, really cool stuff. And so we're thinking, well, we've recently made some partnerships with, Arcus, which is a really cool first-person shooter game using bows and arrows. By the time this video hits, we'll have already announced a partnership with Tencent Cloud, which Tencent, I think, is the biggest gaming company in the world, aren't they? Witnet, Build It Merchants, Lifty, like these are all companies and or projects that are all sort of have been introduced to Elastos. They're interested in the tech, but I think what you guys bring to the table then is sort of like this really great knowledge set around, okay, how do we build this as a community? How do we support each other in creating an ecosystem? And how do we make it cool? And how do we make people want to be part of it and then broadcast it outward? And that's, again, where I think you guys bring a lot to the table in terms of understanding how to create, esports tournaments. Like that's such a huge, it's a lift, man. Like that's a lot of work. So just, maybe speak a little bit more about like, what would be required if we wanted to create a gaming district in Elacity and invite people to come be part of it? Because I think this is sort of the closing part of this interview is I want to invite people. I want to invite more builders and more people with game ideas and investors and people that want to, create that game. We have all the pieces now, so let's do it, So how do we do that?
This is funny. I don't know if you did this on purpose or not, but this is like the answer to this brings the whole conversation full circle of, this goes back to why Wisdom's core focuses are what they are, building gaming communities and helping brands access gamers. It's the same idea with this. We want to build a community of gamers within Elastos, and then help games access these gamers. So what does that look like? And I think what a lot of people don't understand is that gaming and even Web3 gaming is all the same user acquisition and marketing approaches as just traditional Web2. The only difference is we need to make it actually like be truthful and feel good for gamers. So it's not necessarily on the aspect of how do we get this product in front of as many people as possible, but how do we make the product feel as good as possible? And I think where that all starts is being honest with ourselves. I think where a lot of people have trouble is a product that's something they built feels really good to them, but that's because they have the bias of this being their baby. It's the same way that a parent is always going to love their child no matter what. Developers of products love their products the same way a parent loves a kid. It's might not be perfect, but I know what you're supposed to be. I know what you can be, so I love you. So kind of looking at it from the approach of I'm a gamer, what feels good to me? And then kind of really dissecting that, going through and breaking down all aspects from movement to visuals to like how do I want it to feel when I'm interacting with something? Does it feel better if it's instant? Does it feel better if there's some loading time? If it's gradual? Like what should that feel like? And I think that's something that Wisdom, having a lot of pro or former pro gamers and working really closely with gaming studios, can specialize in just what should a good product for gamers feel like.
Awesome. Well, that's the call right there. So anyone who's listening to this, who's got an idea for a game or has a little bit of money burning in their pocket that would like to invest in someone who's got a good idea for a game, or maybe is already building a game and looking to think about how to create some economies and you know, culture and community around those games. I mean, these are all the opportunities I think that we're trying to open up for Elastos and in building this concept of gaming district. So super thanks to you for joining this talk. Even more so thanks to Ian and yourself and everyone over at Wisdom Gaming and Wisdom Labs more specifically for, you know, for the partnership. And we're really looking forward to seeing what can be built, you know, and we're open for business in that respect. So yeah, thanks a lot, Ian.
Awesome. No, I really enjoyed this and I'm looking forward to this partnership as well. Like I said, I'm super excited to see how we can help the Elastos ecosystem, because it's just overall its vision is something that we really want to see thrive and don't want to see like fall. So we're gonna help and do everything we can.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.